this is real for me. And he brought in God into this thing, and he brought in scripture into this thing. That'll screw with you. That'll really mess up your theology and your understanding of Christianity. I always had this sense like the church didn't do that. He did that. And to blame the church would be abdicating, and actually it's a sense of injustice to take that responsibility off of him. He did it.
Welcome to the Live Change podcast. My name is Josh, and today I'm joined with Caroline and Jason, and we're talking about a topic today not a lot of churches or people like to talk about, and that's church hurt. And it's our hope today that by the end of our time, you'll be able to actually discover how to overcome church hurt. Not a lot of churches like talking about church hurt either. And I would imagine for all of us, hey, this is either for somebody listening or somebody listening who knows somebody. It's very near and dear to their heart. And they want so badly for them to go to church. Maybe they want to go to church themselves. And yet the thing that's standing in the way right now is what's happened in the past. Maybe it was a leader who misused authority. Maybe it was hypocrisy. Maybe it was the judgment they felt from some earlier mistakes they made in their life. And sometimes the biggest obstacles to God isn't God or the stuff we experience in life around us. It's the church. And today, I want us to dive headfirst into this topic. Because if we believe the church is the hope of the world, and one of the biggest things standing in the way of that is how people respond to it, we want to remove as many barriers as we can for them. And so maybe just to get us started, how can we actually believe, if we back it up a little bit, that a loving God would allow the church to hurt people around him?
It's maybe important to define terms a little bit for a second too. Like there is definitely abuse within churches. I mean, like there's all sorts of, just do a quick Google search and you'll find all sorts of examples of that. There's horrible things that have happened by people. And then there's a whole nother sort of layer that I think people are talking about sometimes when they talk about church hurt. Like there's some legitimate abuses of power. One of the phrases that's out there a lot right now is spiritual abuse, all that kind of stuff. And then there's just people being people and doing people-ish things. And sometimes that gets lumped in with church hurt as well. And so I think it's important sometimes to distinguish between the two. And I think in light of our conversation today, well, let me say it this way. The majority of people that I talk to who want to tell me about their church hurt experiences usually are not talking about the first category, like the abuse, uses of power in order to, whether that was sexual abuse scandals that have happened in churches, all that kind of stuff, right? That's real, and that is incredibly evil and all that kind of stuff, right? But the majority of conversations I tend to have are just people who ran into jerks. Jenny and I were actually in Arizona recently, and we went to this antique store that she wanted to see. It was an awesome antique store, by the way. Super cool. But anyways, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I do not like, anyways, it doesn't matter.
Turning you to the yeah,
she's
side.
turning me into something, I guess. Anyways, it was a really cool one. But in the middle of that, we meet this woman, and she works there. And it's obvious she wants to talk, and so she keeps talking. And I don't know, we talk about everything. We talk about everything you can possibly imagine talking about under the sun. And eventually it turns to religion and God and spirituality and faith. And she makes it very clear. She doesn't know what I do. She doesn't know that we're Christians. She doesn't know any of that. But she makes it real clear that she is not interested in any of that. She's done that. She's got all sorts of fun words to describe them and all this kind of stuff. And she says she's an atheist. So I listened to her a bunch, and then I just said, how did you become an atheist? What led you to reasoning that out, to land that atheism is the best way of seeing the world? And that's when she launched into, well, my parents made me go to church when I was young, and this person did this, and this person did that, and Christians have been the most judgmental about my lifestyle, and Christians have been the most hateful people who've said these kinds of, so she just goes on this litany of things, and she gets to the end of that, and the only thing I could think to say to her is, none of that proves that God doesn't exist, right? Like all that proves is that jerks exist. That has nothing to do with proving God doesn't exist. So that's not a good reason to be an atheist. There might be good reasons you have to kind of explore that, but that's certainly not one of them. So the reason that church hurt exists is because the church is made up of really broken, sinful, messed up people. And if you find one that's perfect, then don't go, because you'll be the one to screw it up. So I mean, like, that's why it happens. And it would be a shame if someone threw out God just because of some bad experiences with people. And so that's part of what I was trying to challenge that woman on. But that original question you were asking is, how can I believe in a loving God when his people, the church, have hurt me or others so deeply? That's because they're broken, sinful people. But that doesn't reflect on God, no matter how much they want to say it might. Christians have done horrible things. That doesn't mean God's like that. So.
Yeah, I was just watching this Brandon Lake documentary the other day, and it was like part of his like concerts and then just like the story behind the scenes, all of that. And the one part they were showing was one of the few times during his concert that he actually talks. Obviously, he's mostly singing. And I thought it was interesting that the thing he chose to talk about during one of those few times was church hurt. And obviously, it's probably because God put that on his heart. He probably knows so many stories of people, like you're saying, who have church hurt. And he used an analogy to talk about it. He said, have any of you in the crowd ever got food poisoning before? And obviously, a ton of people raise their hand. And then he goes, so after you got food poisoning, did you choose to never trust food again and never eat any food ever again? And obviously, people were like, no. And he said, if you are a believer at some point in your life, in your faith journey, you are going to be hurt by someone in the church because the church is full of broken people who need our perfect God. And he said something along the lines of, it was not your Father in heaven who hurt you, and you need to let him feed you again. And I was like, wow, that's so good. Because I think we so often do that without realizing we're doing it because of the one person that hurt us, or maybe a handful of people. We associate that with like, well, if that's how they are, then that must be how the God that they worship is. And then all of a sudden, over time, that lie is just stamping in our hearts more and more and more. That's how God is. That's who he is. So I don't want anything to do with him.
I love that illustration, actually, that food.
Yeah,
I think it's a great illustration.
Yeah. So I think what I just heard was, all right, almost two categories first to describe what church hurt would be. One is, hey, this is legitimate. Things have been done, wrongs have happened. This requires some serious attention. And then just people being people. Man, just like you butt heads with the people in your family, you don't give up on families. You address the thing. You get back in there and you go through life together. And so I think for somebody listening down the other side of this, they may not know which one that is. How do you know at what point yours is, hey, I just got to get my butt back in church, or I actually have to rebuild some trust or have some conversations or maybe have some therapy and figure this out if I'm going to step back through the doors?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we should be careful to say, like, none of the stuff, like the food poisoning example, food poisoning hurt. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, and we're not saying like it's not real. I'm just trying to say that's a horrible reason to never eat again. And so don't. I think the principle, Caroline, that you're kind of bringing up is don't universalize a particular. And even when people tell me like, but the church hurt me and all that kind of stuff, I can't stand hearing that. Partly because I just feel like that's a victim mentality, to be real honest with you. And I feel like that is. No, not every Christian hurt you. That one did. Not every church hurt. That one did. And so it's kind of the same principle there. Don't universalize a particular. It was a person who did that. And so hold that. By the way, it lets them off the hook if you just blame the church. And it's silly because for every person, I can talk about this more in a second if you want more personally, but for every person who hurts you, there's an equal amount of people who respond with love and grace and kindness. So you can't throw all of that in together. And I just think, honestly, I think we use it as an excuse half the time just not to invest our lives into something, into the church, right? If you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian, I kind of get it. But if you're a Christian, you're called to, it says in Hebrews, to don't give up meeting together. It doesn't say unless you've been hurt. No, that's part of being a community of people who are committed to each other. So all that to say, man, I think we got to be really careful about universalizing particulars, and not broad stroking and everything with that.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be that victim mindset, and we kind of use it as an excuse. But I think also sometimes it can be like this protective mindset, like you're trying to just like protect yourself from ever being hurt again. So you just choose to believe everyone's that way because I don't want to test out if everyone really is that way or not. And so I'm just gonna and you think it's this protective mindset, but it's really actually hurting you because it's closing you off towards forgiveness, towards healing, it's just growing bitterness and resentment. And then it's causing you to believe that God's character equals people's failures. And so it's really just hurting you. But I think sometimes people think it's like, oh, I'm not victimizing, I'm like protecting myself. And so I think there's that mindset there too.
And I feel like I should say this, like I kind of want to give a little bit of, because I could hear someone listening to this and being like, that's very callous, or kind of the ways I'm talking, like a victim mindset. this is real for me. And so I've shared my story a bunch. Don't mind sharing it. I experienced sexual abuse from 9 to 14 by a guy in our church. And he brought in God into this thing. And he brought in scripture into this thing. And that'll screw with you. And that'll really mess up your theology and your understanding of Christianity. All right. So, and then when we pressed charges and he was actually at sentencing, the day we were at sentencing, we had people from that church show up and get on the witness stand to testify on his behalf as character witnesses to get his sentence lightened. Now, so my point is, I have some street cred in talking about that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If you're listening to this being like, whatever, oh, that's just what a pastor would say. No, I've lived this. And I think by God's grace, I do think he graced me in a sense to not universalizing a particular. And I always had this sense like the church didn't do that. He did that. And to blame the church would be abdicating, and actually it's a sense of injustice to take that responsibility off of him. He did it.
So true.
And here's the thing, for every person, I'm not going to, who is a character witness, I'm just going to call him Mike, all right? For every Mike that got up and served as a character witness, you know who else I had in my life? A Mary Edwards. And Mary Edwards, the week after it all went public, and you don't know what the kind of shame I walked into that church with. Now that everyone knew this secret that I've been living with for 5 years, Mary Edwards found me when I walked in those church doors, and she pushed people out of her way to get to me and then wrapped me up in her arms and says, you did nothing wrong. She's like, we are here. We are your family. We love you. We love you. So for every person who was that, you have and so don't give in to that cynicism. I cannot imagine what my life would have been like had I given up on, quote, the church because of one person, what they did. So yeah, it's hard, man. That spiritual abuse, that whatever you experienced, if it's that deep, that is horrendous, and I am deeply sorry. And you're not a victim. So get off your butt and get to church, because the church needs you, and you need the church, and you're going to get hurt again. By the way, I'm not talking about that level. You will get hurt again, and when that happens, don't whine about it. Get up, go offer forgiveness, and be the church to each other, because you're going to hurt someone too. That's part of being the church. So this is a big, so I got so much more I could say. So I'm going to stop, but right now, and let you guys respond. But
something I think powerful you both kind of touched on was you talked a little bit about protection. Hey, it feels protective for me to blame other people, to point the finger, and maybe I wasn't the reason certain things happen. But there certainly is an element of all of our own healing that we do need to own. And I think what I hear you guys saying is, hey, it's okay to acknowledge that I wish this thing didn't happen to me, and that there are people responsible for this thing. But there's a piece of the healing that I need to own in order to really experience God in a full way, hopefully build trust with the church in a new way again. And actually, what I think I heard you say too, Jason, is like part of that healing is actually getting back to church.
Yeah.
It's not just siloing yourself off and doing the therapy and reading God's on your own. It involves the church itself.
Yes, it is a counterintuitive thing. Like in therapy, they call it exposure therapy. Like if you're scared about elevators, what do you got to do? You got to get on the elevator. Yeah. So if you've been hurt by people and you don't want that, you've got to be vulnerable again to people. You said something, Josh, a moment ago, though, that was really good. You said it might actually be keeping you from experiencing God in new ways. 100% that is happening. You cannot know the fullness of God's presence in your life while holding on to bitterness. It's impossible. Jesus said in Luke 17:1, actually, I'm going to read it here because I'm not going to paraphrase this thing. This is in Luke 17:1. He said, it is impossible that no offenses should come your way. It's not might, it's not could, it's going to happen. The question with when you're offended, whether that's big kind of stuff that we were talking about with me a moment ago, or someone said that they were going to show up and they just didn't show up, whatever it might be, right? Offenses. The whole spectrum, that's going to happen, and you will be different as a result of it. And the question is, and this is where Hebrews 13:15 says, let no root of bitterness spring up in your life. So what happens is when that happens, we have this root of bitterness that actually begins to spread, and it can be concealed. That was your thing, Caroline. You were talking about we begin to protect. That's rooted in bitterness half the time. We don't want to. We're just mad about what happened, or we're bitter about what happened. So we have all sorts of protective mechanisms. And then this is a crazy passage. I love this. This is in 2 Timothy. I got to find it. I was telling him earlier. I struggle so bad to find this stuff quickly on my phone. This is in 2 Timothy 2, verse 23. Paul's given Timothy all this like instructions for what not to get caught up in. He's like giving him warnings, right? And he says, flee youthful lust, pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace. Avoid foolish and ignorant disputes, like when offenses get in the way. He's talking about with the church, right? Knowing that they generate strife. And a servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach, patient in humility, correcting those in opposition. Listen to this. Correcting those in opposition, offended with each other, if God perhaps will grant them repentance so that they may know the truth and that they may come to their senses, and here it is, listen to this, and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. Do you understand how pressing Paul is? He's saying if you allow offenses and bitterness to keep you from each other, you are being used by Satan to do his work in this world. John Bevere has an awesome book called The Bait of Satan, and you should go read it. And it's real, and it's about unpacking this, saying the offense and allowing offense to be harbored in your heart is the bait. It is the bait. The actual word when John 17:1 that I was reading a moment ago, where he said, "Let no offenses come." The word for offense is a Greek word called scandalon, and it means a bait or a trap. He's saying it's a trap. It's a trap. It's a bait. And if you give to that and you refuse to forgive people in the church because they hurt you, Paul said, you're being used by Satan. Man, that's just a warning. That's terrifying to me. Like, I don't want to be that, but I know how easy it is to drift into that and realize you can't experience the fullness of God's presence in your life while holding on to bitterness. You can't do it. It's impossible.
So you think you're protecting, but you're actually literally being used by Satan for evil. Like, holy cow.
And
that's a whole
what
different
God
mindset.
can do in you.
Yeah.
And also what a great strategy on the part of the enemy to have church be the thing that you're distrusting when that's going to be the very thing that's actually going to set you free at the end of the day.
I think the thing I would add too is some of the best moments I've had with God in my life of like just, wow, this is amazing intimacy, have been my rock bottom moments where I'm like angry at him. And I'm like, God, why are you allowing this? Where are you? I don't see you. I don't hear you. What is going on? Why am I experiencing this pain? And so I would just encourage the person that's listening right now that is feeling immense church hurt, like if you can just keep fighting and just keep seeking God, even when you don't feel it, even when you don't want to, you might just experience a relationship with him that you never thought was possible, that a side of God that you never even knew was there because you are just willing to, all right, I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep talking to you, God. I'm going to keep journaling. I'm going to keep opening my Bible, even though I'm angry right now.
I love that. And because you'll experience, honestly, you'll have the love of God flowing through you because you will experience what he felt when he forgave and kept forgiving and kept forgiving even when he was hurt beyond anything anyone in this world has ever experienced. But it hurts worse when David in Psalm 55, when you said that, Caroline, it reminded me, like he talks about, my enemy is the one I shared bread with. It's harder when your enemy's within the camp. You expect it from someone outside the camp. And David's saying it hurts worse sometimes when it's in the camp. But you cannot let bitterness hold you there.
And like you said, it's just gonna keep happening. Like maybe not at this level that like felt really big church hurt, but like if you can figure this out now, this is going to help you for the rest of your life because people that you don't think will ever hurt you are going to hurt you. It is going to happen. And so that's just good for life, for the rest of your life. Like you need to know that principle. Yeah,
we had back in the fall when the whole Charlie Kirk stuff was going on, it was a really interesting when that tragedy happened with Charlie Kirk, there was an interesting trend that I saw, particularly in the week after that online. And it was all these people who were getting on Instagram or, TikTok or whatever. And they were saying, well, today's the last day I'm ever walking into my church. I'm leaving my church for the last time today. And the reason why, my pastor didn't say anything about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I saw that.
Or my pastor only said, or the people only said this, or he said this and not this. And then there was a whole group of people who are getting on saying, never going back to church. Why? Because my pastor said something about you.
Yeah.
You think about how, what brilliant strategy of the enemy to get people to, and by the way, that is the epitome of consumer mindset. Someone in my church doesn't do what I like, so I leave. That's what you do at Walmart. It's not what you do at a church. Church is a family. You don't give up on people because they didn't say something you wanted to hear them say, or they said something in a way you didn't want to hear, whatever it might be.
And the church that you're going to try after that is going to do something eventually to make you mad. Yeah.
You just
No
wait.
church is perfect because it's full of imperfect people who need God. Yeah.
So anyways, that was just disturbing, but I think it's indicative of some of where that can lead when a root of bitterness takes hold.
So I think kind of where we've gone so far is, hey, it's helpful to address, hey, what am I dealing with here? Is it something that is big? Is it me just kind of taking something personally? We've talked a little bit about how, hey, I can't just wall myself off. I've got to be open to seeing God in a new way and stepping back into the church as well. And also this element of, hey, I've got to take some responsibility for my healing here. And even just believe God can tell a redemptive story through the church, through my life. And that's just the type of God I believe that he is. What would you guys say, though? One thing we kind of haven't dabbled with yet is like, hey, what's a practical tool to that? You've identified all of that. Look, I have to get myself in church. Where's maybe a good place to start with that? Besides just, hey, Google a church, come to our church, step through the doors. Is there any pro tips or things just to be mindful of as somebody stepping back in through the doors of a church? Is it maybe even just what you said? Hey, be open to the fact that you might get hurt again. What would you tell to somebody who's identified that and they're like, this is the weekend, I'm getting in my car and I'm going?
I feel like we touched on this a little bit. I think someone mentioned counseling at some point, but like there's a lot of hard work to do leading up to that moment. Like, yes, get back to church, go to church. I love that we're saying like, do it. Don't just give yourself an excuse, play the victim. But I think it's really important. The number one thing you've got to do is work on forgiveness. Like you have to forgive. And I want to kind of pause there for a minute because I feel like, especially in the church, forgiveness can sometimes be talked about like it's this easy thing to do. And yes, we should forgive. We are called to forgive. That's so important. But forgiveness isn't easy, especially when it's really big church hurt. And one time my counselor said something that I was like, wow, this just totally changed my whole thought about forgiveness. She said, forgiveness isn't cheap. Think about all Jesus endured on the cross, leading up to the cross to forgive our sins. And she said, it's not cheap. It was so excruciating, so painful. And while we might not experience physical pain to forgive here on earth, we are probably going to experience internal excruciating pain at some point to have to forgive somebody. It's so hard, and that's real. And so I would just say, I don't want to act like it's easy to forgive. And I do think that it's wise, depending on the level of offense that happened to you, like get into counseling, get into therapy. But that might be a journey and it might take time or it might be something that you have to forgive that person daily. And I think that's like the number one thing. You got to start there with your heart.
Yeah. And forgiveness is a process you engage with. It's not just, hey, I forgave the person, everything's good.
Yeah.
It's probably a matter of, hey, I'm willing to forgive whoever this person is, even elements of the church, and then show up one week, and then show up another week, and then another week.
And I would argue,
let God do that work.
Yeah, and I would argue if you can say like, oh, I forgive them like super easily, that might not be genuine. That might not have been real.
Yep, it's true.
I love that's where you went. I think that's the work that needs done while putting yourself kind of back in the elevator, so to speak. And I would just say the other thing is just take it slow. It's okay to take it slow. Just move. Just take your step. That's the bottom line. Don't stay stuck.
Yeah.
It's okay to take it slow, and you don't have to jump right back into stuff. And it's okay to just sit in the back for a little bit and watch the people. And, you know, I get it, man. If you've been burnt, like, it's not like I trusted everybody after some of those things, like right away. You still have to earn trust and build trust and all of that. It's the point is, though, move. That's the point. And I could not reiterate strongly enough more, Caroline, what you said is while that's going on, the real work is not going back to church. That is not the real work. The real work is healing the hurt that has been and like wrongfully been inflicted on you. There is healing for that. There is. So partly maybe what I want to say to everybody listening is if you've been hurt by someone, I'm so sorry. And there is healing for that. There is healing for that. But you got to keep digging. And the last thing I want to say, Josh, from a practical standpoint is there's nothing keeping you while you're doing that sort of internal healing work, while you're dipping your toes back in church, like taking it at your pace, to dig into God's character revealed in the scriptures and like lean closely into God and his nature and his character. People are like, how do I walk with someone who's been hurt by churches? Like a lot of us have friends who, and they might even say that's why they won't come with us to church, whatever. And part of what I would say is you keep pointing them to God who will never fail them. We know that people will fail you. So, but run back to the Psalms, run back to the stories of the scriptures of a God who he will never fail, and root yourself in his character so that when the people around you do, you're not shaken. It hurts, but you're not shaken, if that makes sense.
And I think to add to that, as a friend, in a gentle, loving way, try to remind them of God's faithfulness throughout this whole journey, or his faithfulness in the past in their life, and just remind them, like, this is who God is. Look what he did. Look what he carried you through back then. Look at these little ways he's showing up right now. That's God. It's because he loves you. It's because he's pursuing you. Like, just be that friend that's constantly like, this is who he is. This is who he is. And remember that.
So I think what I'm hearing is if we believe God tells redemptive stories, it's our job to move towards that redemptive story.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the process of showing up, forgiving, doing the work consistently.
Yep.
Hey, maybe this isn't for us. Maybe this is for somebody that we love. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, sometimes as that friend, it can be real hard to be like, now's the time to just listen, just be empathetic, and now's the time to really challenge them. Is there anything that can help us as we kind of navigate or thread that needle with the people that we love most?
Yeah, I feel like, first of all, be patient. We should be patient. We should be Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13 that love is patient and love is kind. And so part of loving people who we want to walk with and we want to see break free from some of that church hurt stuff that maybe they've experienced is to just be patient with them. Don't push them on that. But also, I think the difference, Josh, is if they are wrestling, be patient. If they are struggling, be patient, be compassionate. If they're dug in, I'd push them. If they're dug in, if they're cynical, I'd push them. And it's kind of like, where do you tell the difference? I don't know, but you know it. You know it when you see it. It's like, hey, I'm wrestling. I'm wondering, how could? It's questions. It's like, man, we ought to all day long patiently walk with people through that. But when they've made up their mind, that's like that woman I met at the woman I met at the antique store. Her mind was made up, and so it's like, none of that proves God doesn't exist. You know what I mean? So it's like I can.
Yeah, you have to discern that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to push on that. So there's a time and place for both.
Yeah. You saying that makes me think of the verse in Ecclesiastes. It's like, there's a time for everything under the sun. And one of the things it lists is there's a time to grieve. And I feel like a lot of times people think about grief, they think only like somebody died, somebody passed away. But your grief is a loss. And so if you have church hurt, you experience some type of loss at some level. And so also just remember, like, your friend is grieving. Like, they're going to have to grieve relationships they lost or whatever it may be that they lost. And so I think having that mindset too and treating it that way too, it just goes back to what you're saying. Like, be patient with them. Don't dismiss their hurt. I think a huge part of the healing journey for people is to feel understood and to feel heard and to feel validated. So just really being affirming in that way to them too.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, I once heard grief is just unfinished hurt.
Yeah.
And we don't get to decide when the hurt stops hurting at the end of the day. But we can be there with them. And kind of to your point, Jason, we can feel it out enough to hopefully, and also have enough relational equity, hopefully, with them to occasionally poke and challenge or to invite. We talk about invites here all the time. And you hear it time after time. Hey, I invited the person 12 times. They said no, or they were dug in. But God does something sometimes on that 13th time. And we don't know when that is. We just have to be responsible with what's in front of us and the love we have for them and kind of feel that out and think, well, today's the day I challenge, or today's the day I invite, or today's the day I just sit with them and patiently listen. It's easier said than done, but it's worth doing. So today we hope you heard loud and clear that this isn't the end of your story. That yes, it's worth addressing what has happened in your life through church hurt, but don't stay there. Move towards the redemptive story that God wants to tell through who he is and through the church. This has been the Live Change podcast. If you'd enjoyed today, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe. We'd love to continue to have you as a part of our community. And now that we're lives changed by Christ, go and live changed.